Hi guys, this is the May Patron AMA stream, and this is my second stream of the day. I just finished a stream with a conservative YouTuber, which I know I'm not supposed to do, but I wanted to do it because I'm doing a video that's like another kind of debate video, and I always get inspiration from doing actual debates, but I can't tell anyone on Twitter that I do it or they'll get really mad at me, so I had to keep it a secret. But then I looked at the fucking chat after. I didn't look at the chat the whole stream, and then after the stream I was like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look at the comments section. So I looked at it, and like, why did I look? Why the fuck did I look? Like, I mean, the thing is, like, it's so easy to ruin a trans person's day, and they know exactly. It's not hard, right? They know exactly what to say. They know exactly what to zoom in on. So don't fucking look. But I always fucking look. I need a drink. All right, let's do this AMA, huh? LT Gabby, it might be Lieutenant Gabby, asks, how do I become more comfortable presenting as a woman at work? Well, I get that work is like a very difficult place to start presenting as a different gender. It's not an issue that I really had to deal with because this is my work, so, well, I guess I do have to deal with it. But, I mean, what I would do is, like, start by getting comfortable presenting as a woman other places that are easier, right? Or where you're around new people. And so what I would do is, I don't know, wherever is most comfortable for you to present as a woman. I don't know, whatever that is for you, around friends maybe, or you're just around strangers, just go out in the middle of the day and do that, and then do that for a few weeks and just get used to it. And then make sure you have like clothes that are appropriate women's clothes for your office. So look at what other women wear there and then get clothes like that, for instance. That will help you sort of feel like you're fitting in. And I imagine you probably want to say something before you just show up presenting female suddenly. Or I don't know, this is sort of a transition obstacle that I didn't really have to clear because of the nature of my profession. But yeah, it seems to me that it's the kind of thing you want to work up to, right? Get comfortable presenting as a woman in more comfortable contexts first, and then come out at work. Mark Vanderlan asks, I'm pretty new to your channel, but when did you figure out you were transgender? So, I mean, if I'll, since this is YouTube, I'll explain it in terms of my video catalog. So if you go back to my 2017 videos, in March 2017, there's a video about how I was calling myself genderqueer. So by the point I was making that video, I knew for sure that I was not cis. Like, I knew that I was not a cis guy. I, at that point, still was not, like, sure that I wanted to transition into a woman. Because, as I say in that video, I had all these, like, anxieties and hang-ups. I was like, oh, I'm too tall. My voice is too manly. You know, all these worries I had. I thought I would just be like a hideous freak or whatever. But I realized in the subsequent months that, like, these are actually excuses to not transition and not reasons not to. And I think for me, what identifying as genderqueer non-binary was really about, it was about my not wanting to be a man for sure, and not feeling like a man, and wanting to be a woman really, but not feeling like a woman yet. You know what I mean? Because there's this like awkward period where, you know, you haven't had any experiences living as a woman socially. You are not used to presenting as a woman in public. Like, you haven't started medically transitioning yet. So it feels, or it felt to me, kind of preposterous to call myself a woman under those conditions. So non-binary was a label, or not genderqueer was a label that seemed to fit best. But, you know, between March and August of 2017, I realized, like, come on, like, I'm just a trans woman. And I started transitioning in August. So the last video I made before I started transitioning was gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria, that was a video that I made specifically because I was in the thick of gender dysphoria myself. And I knew as I was making that video, I was like, I'm going to transition because I can't stand this. So that's basically the moment when you could say that was the moment when I decided I'm transitioning. And the realization that I was transgender was really a sort of long process that starts before my channel even starts, really, but which sort of really got prominent, I would say, at the beginning of 2017, and then peaked in summer of 2017, leading me to transition. Sash, S-A-S-H, says, Natalie, so thankful for you and your work. I've been feeling really despondent and hopeless lately, which makes it difficult to engage and try to improve the world around me. Where do you find the strength of spirit, or as cheesy as it may sound, the hope to continue engaging? Well, first of all, thank you. You're very welcome. Where do I find the strength? It's hard. Honestly, there's days lately when, like, the fact that I get paid to do this literally is what keeps me doing it, which I know is not the inspiring answer you're looking for, but to engage as much as I do, you kind of need to be paid because it's so emotionally exhausting that no one should do it as much as I do for free, is what I think. So if you don't engage as much as I do, good. I mean, you don't have to. What I would say is engage as much as you can stand, you know? Don't engage if it's just making you absolutely miserable. You don't owe the world your happiness. So if engagement is something important to you, it sounds like it is important to you and is important to me. You know, what we should do, I think, is be kind to ourselves, right? So don't engage when you're just not up to it, right? Save it for moments when you feel, all right, I'm calm. I can deal with this right now. I can put in a little work on this. And don't read the goddamn comments. So good luck. I think it's noble of you to want to try. Carter asks, with your focus on changing the minds of those on the right, how can the left open corridors for those whose minds have been changed to participate in the progressive sphere? How can we make space for and support those who may be slow learners or have done bad things in their past they want to amend for? Keep fighting the good fight. Yeah, this is something I think about a lot. One thing that I think I would like to see people keep in mind a little bit more is I would like leftists to sort of deploy outrage and criticism strategically, which means in part when someone is like sort of teetering on the edge, or someone seems like they're genuinely repentant about, you know, ways they've acted online, for example, in the past, that is not the time to be like, well, you still have to do a lot of work before we're going to trust you. Like, yeah, they do have to do a lot of work before we're going to trust them, but you don't have to be so aggressive about saying that, you know? Like, there's moments when it's good to, even if someone's done bad things in the past, like, encourage it. I feel like I end up doing this a lot because there's not a lot of people who are willing to do this, and so all the people who need this come to me. But when someone is sort of getting woke, I guess they're just changing their perspective, they often need someone to talk through their realizations. Like, oh my gosh, I just realized that the social group of people I've been engaging with is so toxic and awful, and like, I can't believe I've been with them for so long. Like, that's the moment when you just need to sit there and like listen to them figure it out themselves, you know? And what you shouldn't do at that point is be like, okay, but you also participated in, I mean, and sometimes it depends on how bad the thing we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, if someone did something really bad, then like you might need to use a different method. But I'm just talking about like online engagement, for example. If someone's changing their mind, I think it's good to support that person. So I would say that taking a attitude of support for people who are sort of in the process of rethinking things is, I think, helpful. Okay, Margaret Staples. Okay, context in brackets. Immanuel Kant's text logic. Oh my god, Margaret, you're killing me. You're making me think about Immanuel Kant right now. Immanuel Kant's text logic was transformative for me when I came across it as a teenager. It made sense in a way that the people in my life didn't. It was like a life raft in a sea of chaotic, confusing, and often hurtful humans. Later I tried reading his critique of pure reason, but wasn't able to get through it as it was so bogged down with the religious culture of his time and place. I love listening to you talk about philosophy and how it relates to modern human issues. Okay, end context. What do you think about Kant's logic, and is there any chance you do a video featuring his content in the future? You know, I really don't know Kant's logic very well. I think I read the critique of pure reason a few times when I was studying philosophy, because that's like an important text or whatever. And there was a time when I could make sense of that. I haven't thought about it in about 4 years though. So honestly, I don't know that I can say anything really about Kant, except for two things that I can talk about: his ethics, which I do remember very well, some of his political philosophy, and some of the like epistemology in the critique of pure reason, but I don't really remember the logic stuff. If I talk about Kant in a video, it will almost certainly be because of his political or moral philosophy. And there's a chance that that'll come up. Yeah, there's definitely a chance that that'll come up. Margaret Staples. Also, do you like the wine glass? Oh, if you're talking about the... Margaret, did you send me the bath bombs with the wine glass? Because I'll write you a thank you note when I get around to doing that. But if you're talking about the wine glass I think you're talking about, yeah, I love it. And it's definitely... It looks really cool in my lighting, so it'll definitely be in a video at some point. Thank you. Wispy says, when are you coming to SoCal so we can hang out? Well, I probably will be going... I'm almost definitely going to VidCon. So I'll be in LA. Maybe I can do... I don't know. It depends. I'll sort of see if I can get a feel on Twitter for how many people are going to be around for VidCon. I might do an LA meetup, or try to do an LA meetup during VidCon sometime. So that's the next time. I know a bunch of YouTubers who are always like... They're always trying to like get me to go to move to LA. So there's a chance that I will move to LA, but I'm certainly not like totally decided on it. Tyler Boone says, do you have any thoughts on the long-term goals of your channel? Do you want to keep it more personal, or will you expand it to other mediums like podcasts, smaller videos, other shows? Congrats on hitting 100K. Maybe now Dave Rubin will acknowledge you. Yeah, probably not. So long-term goals, yeah, I don't have any long-term goals. I don't have any long-term goals for my channel. I don't have any long-term goals for my life. I live 1 month at a time, the Patreon way. I mean, I expect to do more of the same until that stops working, or until I get bored, basically. So I think that to make it in this world online, you have to be extremely agile, and you have to be sensitive to the way things are changing. So I don't think it makes sense for me actually to make long-term plans. I need to kind of see what happens to the community I'm in, and see what happens to the landscape of commentary online, and I need to be always responding to those changes. So basically the long-term plan is that I stay very flexible and agile and ready to adapt. Daniel Sullivan says, my name got chopped. Okay, well, this has been addressed in the chat. John S. Rockermeyer says, woohoo! The naughty German fans want 2 questions answered. All right. Frage 1. Wie bist du darauf gekommen, Deutsch in deine Videos einzuführen? How did you get into introducing German language pieces into your videos? Well, when I was in grad school, I took 2 years of German, which I had to do so that I could read Kant in German, and so I could read all these German philosophers, which I never really got very good at, but I did do it for 2 years, so I can sort of like fake German, and that's what made me. And it's just fun, you know. It's like fun to speak in German in the videos. I don't know. I just find it like really fun. So that's basically why. I wish I could do more languages. Like I think French and Italian would be really cool to be able to speak in videos. Maybe I should just take language classes. That'll be like a fun like distraction thing, you know. Second question: to which address post office box can fans send stuff? Well, unfortunately, at this point, like for my own safety, I really can't have people mail things except stuff they send me off my wish list. Which I'm sorry about, but just like there's just too much shit out there for me to be like publicly posting even a PO box. I don't know. Maybe I'd be safe with the PO box, but there's just a lot of bad people in the world, so I'm like skittish about it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Sean Oscar says, "Hey Natalie, I've got an academic background in philosophy too. So my question is simply, other than John Berger, what philosopher or school of philosophy has had the biggest impact on you, or even how you've lived your life?" Wow, I know I've said this on my... I've said this on streams before, but Wittgenstein, especially like late Wittgenstein, I think had a really big effect on how I think about language and concepts, which sounds like such a boring, like academic, like arcane thing. But actually it turns out to have all kinds of like really pragmatic consequences, especially when it comes to some of the things I talk about on YouTube, like gender. So that "What is Gender" video I did last year, like that's a very like Wittgenstein video, right? So I'm thinking, so talking about, oh, a philosophy of concepts interests me. Like that sounds so boring and so irrelevant to anything, but actually it's really interesting because so many of the questions that come up in debates we have about things, like what does it mean to be a woman, right? What is gender? How could someone be non-binary? These are kinds of questions that, in order to answer those questions, you have to kind of know what sort of answer you're looking for. And reading Wittgenstein, I think, helped me think about, like, in particular, this like use theory of meaning, where when you want to know what a word means, like really know, in some philosophical sense, like you want to really know what a woman is. Well, according to Wittgenstein, the answer is not metaphysics. Like you don't try to penetrate the deep inner core of reality to discover the secret ultimate truth about what being a woman is, because that doesn't exist. What you do instead is you sort of simply look at the word woman. How is it used? What kinds of situations in human life does this word apply? Like where, like who do we call this? And like the point, for instance, of a trans woman being a woman is not that there's a secret metaphysical reason. It's that for most intents and purposes, like we're women and the word woman applies to us. That's, it's used in the usual way in most situations. And I think that's a much clearer way of thinking about this kind of topic than the kind of like metaphysics way of thinking about it. Okay, Gary Brooks says, "You guys are really make me think here tonight. It's a lot of content, Wittgenstein, my God." Gary Brooks says, "I'm working on a paper on trans status as women. I survey the non-academic discourse, which is you either accept trans women are women, synonymous with women, or they're just men in dresses. My basic thesis is this is a strawman dichotomy, and that the point of the current debate is that the concept of what is a woman is not cut and dried and easy. I conclude intersectionality gives us the rubric to conclude trans women, not having been raised as women, but certainly not as men either, occupy their own space as trans women, but they are neither intersectionally women as traditionally understood, nor men, that is, trans women, are trans women. not men or women. They have a new ontologically and thus phenomenologically discrete category as their intersectional experience is both different from male and female simplicator. All right. Oh my God, speaking of making me think, I think that in a sense, what you're saying is true, right? That the kind of intersectional thinking that we do about experience, oppression, leads us to conclude that trans women are in a very sort of, in a lot of ways, a very different category from either cis men or cis women. That said, you're taking a philosophical approach that likely will piss off a lot of activists, because trans women are women, and a simple statement is very important to a lot of trans people. And I mean, I'll try to explain why. Basically because what trans women want and need to really function in society is basically to be treated as women, not as some kind of third gender, category. And this, when it comes to things like bathrooms and, like, we use like women's bathrooms and we get called female pronouns, and we get, people basically just treat us like women if things are going well for us. And so you're right, though, that we do have very different experiences from cis women. So I guess my challenge to you as you're writing this is to think, why is the cis trans distinction not enough to delineate the difference that there is between cis women and trans women? Because of course no one denies that there's a significant difference, right, between cis women and trans women, but that's why we have these words cis and trans. So I mean, I'm not saying that you're entirely wrong, but one thing that you definitely would want to address in that paper is why do you need to introduce this notion of trans women occupying this third space, as you're putting it? Isn't that already covered by calling them trans women, right? The prefix trans is supposed to cover it's supposed to cover that. So that's what I would say is like my one sort of challenge to that. Jazzy Hansen says, have you seen The Shape of Water? If so, what do you think? Amazing piece of feminist art or filthy bestiality? Well, I unfortunately have not seen it, so I can't really answer that question. That said, I doubt I'll object to the filthy bestiality. I approve of cinematic filth. Excuse me. Okay, Rainboy says, I've been talking all day, so I feel like I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit. I'm sorry. It's just gonna get really breathy and whispery. Rainboy says, hi Natalie, do you think classical liberalism has anything of value to add within the context of modern liberalism? Thanks, I love your videos. You're welcome. Do I think classical liberalism has anything to add? So I think that classical liberalism, this phrase, really just refers to economic conservatism most of the time, right? It refers to the idea that the way it's commonly used in the United States anyway, is it refers to small government, individual liberties. I'm not sure. I think it just is, a kind of conservatism. But does it have anything to add within the context of modern liberalism? So what does modern liberalism mean? Well, if we're using liberalism in the United States sense of the left in general, such as it is, or are we using liberalism in the leftist sense of fucking neoliberal? Well, let's suppose we're using it in the American sense, where liberalism just means Democrats and leftists all thrown together. I don't really think that that has that much to add. No, I mean, I think that like classical liberalism, like is supposedly this tradition that, I mean, all of our politics really stretches back to like original liberalism, right? Like John Locke and that kind of stuff. So I think like that, in the sense that there's that continuity with most of our political thought, I think that that is, I guess, something of something value. But other than that, other than the kind of like ancestral or like genetic value that it has, I don't think it has any current value now. Tom Martell says, out of curiosity, do you foresee the Doctor character coming back in a video sometime? I recently rewatched What Is Ray's video and realized I miss her. So the Doctor character is... It's funny because she's not a character. It's just like a costume. And a costume, though, that comes up whenever I need someone to explain science. But I think that I like the costume. It's true. It's kind of like a distinctive ContraPoints look. I'm sure it'll come back. Yeah, I'm sure it'll come back. Okay, Chelsea Williams says, Fluff. Natalie, you're a very entertaining woman, and your videos are balanced and thoughtful. Cake. Oh, your video is balanced and thoughtful cake, coated with a nice butter-based femininity icing. Thank you. Question. Has the term white privilege used by the left caused a sense of being demonized, pushing them into the comforting arms of the alt-right? Would the term privilege of majority be more apt term, specifically when coming to seeing one's representation within film and government, or oppression of minorities? And then they cite a Wikipedia article of the census showing that white people are the majority. So I see what you mean, that a lot of people hate the term white privilege, and it causes them to get super defensive. I don't think that switching to privilege of majority will work for a couple of reasons. One is that I think whatever defensiveness white privilege causes, privilege of majority is likely to cause the same defensiveness. The other problem is that privilege of majority, I think, is actually less accurate than white privilege, because what causes white people to have privilege is not just that they are a majority. I mean, because I live in the city of Baltimore, where white people are actually a minority in terms of the population, but we have white people in the city wield much more economic influence and political influence, or that there's just more, I guess, maybe not political influence in the sense of like local government is actually more black than white, I think, but economic influence, oh yeah, like white people have much more economic power in the city. And I think that, in countries like South Africa, where there's always been a black majority, white people were still dominant. So the problem is like the power and the supremacy of white people, not just that they're the majority. So, I mean, I guess I always do try to be very careful when talking about white privilege to make clear what exactly I'm talking about and try to like stave off the defensiveness. But I think that, it's not, I think switching to privilege and majority doesn't help. No, I think it's less accurate and likely has the same problems. Break for me to take a drink. Okay, Jackal59 says, now that you've talked about capitalism, would you consider talking specifically about the state? I don't mean the states of any particular political system, but instead the state and its constituent components, hierarchy, legally constituted identity, legitimization of centrally organized violence, and so on. Possibly. This is like kind of more of a like 2012 topic, I think, where the like libertarian thing was more of a topic than it is now. It's not something that I think a lot about, but I guess instead of having a lot of libertarian conversation about this, there's more of the anarchist conversation about this, because there's a lot of anarchists on the left side actually now who are against the state. I don't feel, it's not a topic that's like grabbing me as something I really want to talk about. Is there a chance I'll talk about it in the future? Yeah, definitely. But in order for me to do that, I would sort of probably the conversation online in general would need to suddenly start revolving around this topic more generally. John Leonard says, can you remember a work of art of any genre, film, visual art, literature, etc., that really shaped you as a creative person? Thanks, I love you. Thanks, John. Let's see. See if I can name a work of art that I won't get in trouble for talking about. Well, I will get in trouble for talking about this. I do like Stanley Kubrick's movies. At least I used to. I really like the sort of visual pleasure that's given priority over other elements. So the sort of the very like deliberate artifice of the shots a lot of the time, right? The symmetry, the kind of like classical like stylistic self-conscious like artiness of it, I guess, is something that I think influences the way I think about like the visual style of my videos in some way. I tentatively introduce Kubrick because I think he's also a raving misogynist in a lot of ways. But I think that the visual style is not itself misogynistic, so the visual style is like sort of what I'm picking up on. And I like, my videos, I don't want to make them look, I don't try to make them look like just like very natural, you know what I mean? Like if I'm shooting like the Freedom Report or something, I don't make it look like an actual studio that where someone would actually shoot a political talk show. Instead, I just focus on like interesting colors and interesting looking props and things like that. So that kind of preference for like style over realism, I think, seems kind of, well, I don't know if Kubrick is necessarily always that, but I don't know. It did have an influence, and you can obviously see in a lot of my, especially my earlier videos, there's a lot of like Kubrick references. I still kind of do it. There's a lot of Kubrick references in my videos. Antoine Schmidt says, Fashion Face-Off Facial Hair Edition, David Rubin, Jordan Peterson, and the Golden One. Who wore it better? That's a tough one. I want to say probably Jordan Peterson, to be honest. I genuinely do think, after just talking about how I don't want to get in trouble for saying things, I'm going to say something that gets me in trouble. I do think Jordan Peterson is kind of a daddy. Like, he just kind of is, like, and the facial hair is part of that. Yeah. Like, I think he wears it well. The Golden One does not. The Golden One is better, I think, clean shaven. Orion Taylor says, Hey Nat, in your Why I Quit Academia vid, you mentioned how, in leftist circles, a lack of need to defend against right-wing ideas has left most leftists without the vocabulary or familiarity of arguments necessary to do so. I found this to be quite true, so I was wondering, what proactive arguments do you find particularly compelling? What would you consider to be the first principles of modern leftism? Well, I guess that tends not to be exactly how I think about it, but how do I think about it? I think that the way I usually think about arguing with the right is I look at their concerns and their kinds of arguments, and I think about how I respond to that. I approach it kind of that pragmatic way instead of trying to like think about my core root principles or something, first principles, like you said. That was what you said. Which I don't do. I mean, if I were to think of what I consider the first principles of modern leftism, I would say basically, the idea that hierarchies need justification, that you should be suspicious of all claims that the present social order is natural. You should understand that that being in a position of power limits your perspective in certain ways that can only be overcome by listening to the perspectives of people who have less power. These are the kinds of sort of general topics that I think sort of amount to the principles that we have. I would say that they really, in order to be argumentative, they need to be fleshed out with concrete, sort of compelling examples. I think it's a good question. It's something worth thinking about more, I think. I kind of like the idea of like first principles of modern leftism, and I've never like written out such a thing, but like now that you mention it, I'm kind of curious to try to do it. Oh my god, my voice is like killing me. Maxime Durand says, "Hey Natalie, any plans on doing another all art video like the on gender dysphoria? It resonated with me on a deep level, even though I'm not trans. I know it's a hard and personal topic, but I just mean art, like as opposed to your others more critique-like videos. Anyway, I found you out of the anti-SJW discussion you had a few months ago, and it really made me rethink my position on the political spectrum, so I'm loving it." So the video I'm working on this month actually is probably the one that's closest to that gender dysphoria video of any I've done since then. And it's like the most like, it's a video I'm making for artistic reasons above other reasons. I would say more than anything else I've done since gender dysphoria. It's still it's not quite as arty as gender dysphoria is, but it's more arty than the other stuff I've done. So yes, I do want to go back to that kind of thing. And I want to return to a really arty video at least once in 2018, I think. I would like to do that again. It's important to me to do that from time to time, because otherwise I just feel like a political commentator hack. Somniferous Almond and Cocaine Mitch 2020, what a name, says, "Hey Nat, not really a question, just interested in hearing any thoughts you might have in regards to engaging with disillusioned former voters, non-voters. It seems to me that an almost excessive amount of concern is directed towards converting people on the right, while disaffected, ostensibly left are routinely ignored. I feel like this needs to be reversed. Maybe I'm wrong. Also, how's Chelsea Manning's campaign going? Anything you can share?" So I would say that I kind of agree with you, actually, that a lot of times when I talk about converting people on the right, dyed-in-the-wool conservatives are not really who I'm after. I'm more after people who like are just kind of like, I don't like any of this, and they sympathize with anti-SJW people because they don't like being told what to do, and the conservative worldview is easier in their disaffection, to go along with them, all the like annoying, difficult things it seems like leftists are telling them to do, So I think that, in a sense, disaffected, ostensibly left-leaning people, that those are the ones who I'm after. And a lot of the times, the people who I like convert or whatever, or people who cite me as an influence in changing their minds about things, I think those people tend not to have been dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. They tend to be people who like sort of were liberal, and then they got annoyed because of SJWs, and then like I helped talk them down from that. So, yeah, I think people on the left, I'm saying that, I feel like I say this a lot lately, like people on the left, it's important that we do not underestimate the power of SJW hatred, because it really seems to have a huge effect on a lot of people. They really, really, really don't like being told that they're bigoted by these easily offended college students. And it makes people do all kinds of crazy things. I mean, that's the energy that almost anyone can pick up on, that anti-SJW energy, and carry it places. So understanding that emotion and that situation is, I think, very important. Not, as you say, not with converting right-wingers, but with keeping tentative allies on board, you know? I read that ID Vice piece, and the author said you gave John Oliver vibes. I think that Vice, that subtitle, which said John Oliver vibes, that actually wasn't written by the author, because oftentimes the title and subtitle are written by the editor and not by the author. So I think that probably the John Oliver thing was written by an editor who's never seen my videos and just heard, oh, funny leftist. That's like John Oliver. That's how I think that got in there. I haven't really been keeping up with Chelsea's campaign, so I don't really have any information to disclose. Okay, Valerie Fox says, being, let's say, semi-famous on YouTube, do you find this experience to be connecting or isolatory from others? How much does it affect your personal life? Well, I think that when you start YouTubing, there's a kind of upward trajectory where you feel more and more connected to people and it's really exciting and you're meeting all these new people and it's like you feel like your social circle is expanding. At some point, I went over the hill and it's become isolating. And it's... I mean, like I said at the beginning of the stream, like there are days when like the fact that I'm getting paid to do this is what keeps me doing it. Because it gets hard, like, and it's really affected my personal life. It's affected my online life, certainly, where I don't really, I don't really feel like I can. I used to kind of use Twitter to like reveal all my thoughts and feelings about whatever, and I can't do that at all anymore. I sort of give myself 12 opinions per year is how I think of it, right? I get one opinion per YouTube video and then no extra opinions. The worst thing about it, I would say, is that I just feel so scrutinized. Especially my physical appearance. I feel it. I'm obsessed with it. It's like it's the main thing I think about all day. And I didn't, some of that is transitioning, but a lot of it is the way I'm treated online. Wow, I'm getting really whiny. You kind of provoked me to this, but I haven't been whining about it on Twitter because I don't tweet anymore, so I need someone to whine to about it. I'm whining to my own patrons. How pathetic is that? All right, let's keep going. I'm sorry, Valerie. I just gave you such a depressing answer. But it is true. You asked, as I give you the true answer, which is that being semi-famous on YouTube is isolating. It does affect my personal life. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat. Alex M. This is what I pay for. You pay for my whining. Okay. Stopping spaces. How would you describe your own personal style? And where do you take fashion and style inspiration from? My style is like, it's like an art teacher. as how I think of it. Like, kind of like lots of like floral patterns and like jangly necklaces and rings. And then like, I often wear my hair up in like a top and like a messy updo, and I think it's like a very art teachery kind of look, maybe like piano teacher kind of look. Not piano teacher because of the nails, but where do I take style and fashion and style inspiration? Well, I have very particular style and fashion needs because of my height and, you know, weird mannish shoulders and rib cage and all that. So like I've kind of had to figure things out on my own, and like I've learned over time what clothes look good on me and what don't. So for instance, like especially on my upper body, like certain cuts look better than others. Like I find that spaghetti, I don't do anything with spaghetti straps, for instance, because it just makes my shoulders look too mannish. So something perfectly that either like, in videos I wear a lot of like those like that cold shoulder look where like the top is like cut off here because that actually kind of sort of minimizes the width of my shoulders. I wear a lot of like stuff that has like this kind of neckline, like either like a deep kind of V neckline or like a scoop neckline. Looks good on me. I like a lot of like floral. I'm not answering the question. The question is, where do I look for inspiration? So I follow on Instagram, like I try to follow like a lot of trans people who are stylish, like trans fashion models or trans women, I mean, and especially tall ones. That because whatever they wear, I try to look at that because that what looks good on them is gonna look good on me. You know, I'm not gonna look good in anything that Kim Kardashian wears. Like, it's about matching your body type to a style. And for me, actually, kind of like high fashion looks kind of are good for me because a lot of like, you know, high fashion models, they kind of have my body, which is like very tall, very skinny, you know, strong shoulders, no tits, that kind of thing. So yeah, I look good in those kinds of things. Faron asks, oh my god, Faron, I don't think you've asked a question before. You're like one of the oldest patrons I have. I'm so happy that you're still here because seeing your name reminds me of like those really early videos where there was like 12 patrons. I remember that you were one of them. All right, anyway, this is not what you asked for. Do you think art and aesthetic can justify all types of depiction of violence and cruelty? At what point do you think it's okay to enjoy Sod, for example? Personally, I like Sod because I can see myself in this feverish geometrical decadence and his disappointing persona, and it's always nice to see that you're not alone. But I'm also a little worried by the idea that it is somehow liberating and progressive. To me, it feels more like a burden, and I can't really see a deeper philosophical meaning besides justification of guilt. What do you think about that? Yeah, so I like a lot of art. Like I said in that violence video, I like a lot of art that's very violent or that's very problematic or that deals with like very difficult things. And as you can tell, I'm like reluctant to talk about it because I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But like, so I used to like reading Sod when I was younger because I was such a little edgelord, and like there's something kind of funny about it. I think like the fact that it's so excessive and ridiculous, and like it's just like orgies of violence and sex. Like it's just kind of funny to me. I don't know. I don't think I would like it now, but I think that sometimes there's a reason why you feel bad when art is really violent. And the reason often is that the violence is sort of not, I mean, Sod is, you know, you're not really ever, I don't really ever identify with Sod. I'm kind of laughing at it and not with it, I think. But I think that, you know, we talked last time about A Clockwork Orange and how it's in some ways a good aesthetic, a good work aesthetically, but I'm troubled by the fact that the violence against women in that movie is so utterly depicted from the male perspective that you sort of lose the humanity of the victims, and like, you know what I mean? So distinguish that from like Lolita. Oh god, I can't talk about this. So Lolita by Nabokov is a very good book. but it's written from the perspective of a like child abuser. And one of the reasons why that doesn't give me the moral pang so much is that because of the way it's written, I know that Nabokov is showing us the impact of what this monstrous protagonist is doing. And there's this sort of like deep like moral reflection on it that's implicit in the work itself. So it's the absence of the moral competence of the author, I think, which is definitely what you have with Sod. When the author is not morally competent and is not giving you signs of moral competence within the work, then the depiction of violence becomes uncomfortable, I think. I mean, it's uncomfortable in Lolita too, of course it is, but you're not uncomfortable being willing to enter into this world because you know that the author is showing you, in some sense, a depiction of abuse as it really happens. And sort of understands on some level the consequences of it. I don't know, does that make sense? Tanky Factory says, have you switched your Patreon payments to monthly yet? Oh my god, I'm gonna do it this weekend. I don't constantly saying I'll do it. I'm about to do it. I've been putting off the Discord hangout until I publish the proposal. I'm gonna try to do it by the end of this weekend. I've been really busy with the next video, but I'm gonna try to do it by the end of this weekend. Michael Puckett says, Best of the Left just did a podcast debating economic proposals, with quite a few socialists criticizing UBI as a neoliberal Trojan horse and as a way to destroy the social safety net. I'm not wed to UBI, but I do think there's a need for radical economic change that better distributes wealth. I know you're not an economist, but have any proposals that stood out to you? So, I do think that I think that leftists are right to be cautious about UBI, because I agree that it could be deployed in these very problematic that's not the right word, problematic ways, or it could be used wrongly, right? It could be used as a substitute for, healthcare and things like that, or it could be used just to sort of placate people without really changing anything. These are all worth bringing up. As I said, I think there could be a kind of UBI that would be a vast improvement on like what we currently have. So I don't necessarily think it's inherently a bad idea. I don't know of any concrete, definite UBI type proposals. This is universal basic income, by the way, for people who don't know that acronym. I'm not sure that I know of any definite proposals that I've specifically endorsed now. Brad Savvy says, Dearest Natalie, how do you feel about the left's sense of tactics when it comes to presenting ideas combating right-wing narratives? I know you've been criticized in the past for your own choices in this matter, but I've always found your reasoning sensible. Thank you, Brad. How do I feel about the left's sense of tactics? Well, I think a mix of tactics are good. I've been thinking lately about the decline of the alt-right, because if you may have noticed, the alt-right is basically just done in. What caused that to happen? Well, I think it's a mix of different tactics. I think that Antifa actually did a lot. And Richard Spencer has said as much. He said, our rallies basically are unworkable because of Antifa. So that fucking worked. I think that also the fact that everyone in the alt-right actually are kind of incompetent fools who all kind of despised each other behind the scenes really undid them. And I like to think that some little part was played by the kind of commentary that I and a lot of other people are doing online. This like anti-propaganda war, right? This this stuff, I think it helped a little bit. I do think it did. So insofar as I had some small part in that, I'm proud of having, you know, done that aspect. I think so. I think that, you know, I think a variety of tactics are useful. Like, I think that it's good to have something like Antifa, who are really disrupting the very extreme end, right? The Nazis. It's good to have someone disrupting their organizing. I think that it's also good to have someone on the other side of things doing public debates. Someone who's good at doing public debates is actually good to have, I think. So that's my current view, is that this kind of plurality of tactics is what works. Yeah. Liz Tudor says, "Hey Nat, love your stuff so much, OMG." You're welcome. I mean, thank you. Wow, I'm losing my mind. I don't know if this has been asked before, but are there any topic requests that you get that you are very opposed to doing, or at least have serious reservations about doing? This could be anything from a extremely contentious subject to a very innocuous one. Let's see. What requests do I get? I guess people sometimes often request like too specific things or overly academic things that I sort of don't feel I want to do for this audience, the size of the audience I have. Is there anything really contentious that so race and IQ. I get a request to do race and IQ. I don't particularly want to do that because, well, maybe I do want to do it. But basically the reason I don't want to do it is that I think that it's the kind of question that needs to be sort of deconstructed instead of answered. So what race realists do is they say, you know, oh, there's this literature that you're not allowed to talk about that the leftists deny that shows that there's racial differences in IQ. Why can't we talk about that? You know, and so here's the thing. They're trying to bait you into talking about these differences. This data, right? What the question actually should be is, one, is there evidence that these differences are genetic and inevitable? Two, and actually that's not even really the question. The question is there evidence that there are racial IQ differences that are genetic and unchangeable and also so pronounced that social and political decisions need to be made with that in mind? And then the answer to that is almost certainly no. But to merely go into the data and then start arguing about that, I think is misleading. I think it's getting led down the wrong path. I mean, you could do, this is why I said I don't think this deserves a whole video. Like, I think it's an important point to make because it's an important sort of rhetorical moment. But I think it's, you know, saying, okay, yeah, so there are observed between group differences when it comes to race and IQ. The science does not demonstrate conclusively that these are genetic. There's good reasons to think a lot of it's environmental. And even if there is some genetic remainder, which we can't prove that there is, then there's not any reason to think that it's so significant that it needs to inform our politics. So that's really the right way to shut it down, rather than to deny outright that there's any difference, right? Because denying that there's any difference, well, then can just show you this data. Because the question isn't really about the data, it's what the data means, right? Maybe I should do a video about that. No, I don't want to do it. That's the other thing I don't want to do. Videos that are too, like, miserable. So I think last time someone asked me about a video about mass incarceration. I don't want to do a video about mass incarceration because it's too miserable. Like, my channel is like, it's 50% a comedy channel. You know what I mean? Like, I try to make these things funny. A white person shouldn't be making mass incarceration funny, I think. So I'm not sure it's really appropriate as a topic for the nature of my channel. Okay, Nicole Russell says, your comment in the Jordan Peterson video about the left not having more positive meaning of life discussions got me thinking. What do you think about a channel that highlights positive things on the left and has video essays on class-conscious financial parenting lifestyle advice and mental health awareness, with humanizing lefty outreach to the average American? What does left YouTube need more and less of? As always, thank you for your work. You're welcome, Nicole. So what I think is that that's actually a really good idea. I do think that, in historically, like, a lot of times the reason that political groups get so much devotion is that they do this kind of self-help stuff, or not, say, sometimes other help, group help, right? Like, it can be as simple as like the Black Panthers, like feeding school children. Like, it's good to be offering something, right? So I think combining our activism with sort of some kind of program that promises to help people, or that effectively does help people, that I do think it could be useful, yeah. Sergey Z says, hi, I know that you've pointed out several times that the left has a read the book first problem. Well, I agree with the fact that a ton of leftist theory is just boring to read, while someone has to actually read it. Otherwise, we'll talk only vague terms of justice and solidarity. Do you have any thoughts on how to make theory more bearable? Thanks, love your work. You're welcome. So I think that what would be useful is if we could rely, because I think we need to do theory in a different way, basically. I think that theory as we know it, this like very academic thing, needs to be rethought, right? We need to have a theory that's sort of written for general audiences. And that doesn't mean it has to be dumbed down. I think that it's simply a matter of having these conceptual, like big picture discussions. These are discussions that can be had in pretty accessible language. And I just think that there's not really, unfortunately, because academia doesn't encourage that, because there's no reason to, because all the papers that are written in a given field are read by other people in that field. But I think that having leftist publications like, our new champion, Current Affairs, for example, it's good to have those online publications where, these things can be discussed in kind of, theoretical terms. Yeah, I think that it's true. We should be asking what is justice? We should be asking what is equality, It's true that are these important questions, but I don't see why they have to be so academic. Okay, Alejandro says, you mentioned in the last Discord chat that you wanted to turn the attention of your videos towards liberals. Do you think a critique of the liberal conception of social justice and identity politics would be helpful? A specific example would be how liberals view affirmative action. Sounds bad at first, but bear with me. The one valid criticism of affirmative action I've heard is that it's at best a band-aid to a much larger problem, or at worst an obfuscation of systemic problems. Affirmative action in relation to jobs doesn't mean the systemic issue that the labor of people of color, women, and LGBTQ and disabled people is valued less than the labor of able-bodied cis white men, on top of all labor being exploitation under capitalism. Soft question. Okay, hold on. Let me answer the hard question first. The question was, do I think a critique of the liberal conception of social justice? So I think in certain situations, it is worth doing that. Yeah, so I think that we should sort of be conscious, at least, that we all need to be sort of reminded that having gender equal CEOs is not going to solve a lot of the problems that we have in our society, right? That said, I think that this overly, sometimes I find Marxists can be so hostile to that kind of like liberal feminism thing that they're actually sort of harming, for instance, like the cause of women's advancement, because the reality is that there's not going to be a revolution tomorrow. And so it's actually not unreasonable, I think, for women to advocate for their advancement within the capitalist system and the increase of power of people of color, for instance, within the capitalist system. So I think it's a balance of yeah, we should actually try to, advocate for that. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that like that's not going to be a final solution to all these issues, that we need to also bear in mind the economic roots of some of these things, Soft question, how white girl wasted did you get in Vegas? Pretty white girl wasted. It was a good time. We saw Magic Mike XXL. It was fun. Also switched to monthly patronage. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna do it soon. Dimphnomaniac says, will you be at Hunfest in your Lady Foppington wig? I'll give it some serious thought. This is a Baltimore question. Amrit says, I don't think she knows that Kathy Newman is Channel 4, not BBC, because there's no caption correction. But I'm not going to waste a... Believe me, about 400 people have told me that Kathy Newman is Channel 4, not BBC. I'm American, so I didn't really understand the difference. I'm so sorry. I've been told that there's apparently a very big and very important difference. So I fucked that up. Okay. Hi, Natalie. Would you have voted for Obama a third time? Well, it depends who he's running against. And, obviously you can't do that in America. If he was running against Donald Trump, oh my God, I would have smashed that vote button. Voted and subscribed. But if he was voting against, I don't know, someone better than Obama, then probably I would have voted for the better person. I mean, in other words, I don't have such hostility to Obama that I would be like, no, fuck him, no matter what. No, like if it was Obama and a Republican, I would have voted for Obama again. Yep, absolutely. Kakir Tog, the chart in gold says, what do you think of modern feminism? That's, oh my God. Watch my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel about that. I don't know how to answer that question. What do I think of modern feminism? I guess it's good, except when it's bad. Let me just think of an opinion to have about feminism. I think one thing that's interesting is that feminism, like just feminism period, is like much less discussed online than it was 5 years ago. I don't know exactly why that is, but apart from the like Me Too movement, it's just not discussed as much as it used to be. In part because the like right-wing internet has kind of shifted the target. I mean, obviously they still are very, very anti-feminist, but they are so focused on race now and on trans people, right? This is the two things they're obsessed with. This is a bad answer, but the question is too big. Okay, hold on. Would I kiss your baby if I was running for office? I guess. I would never run for office, though, partially to avoid baby kissing. All right, let's refresh to see if we have more questions. Sorry. Oh, bonus question. Is there any chance of fleshing out the Discord with a couple more channels? Well, this is kind of being dealt with in the... I see annoyances on top of this with the fan Discord. I basically don't feel like I can have any kind of fan community because I feel like as a result of things that have happened to me several times over the last year, I feel like it will inevitably turn against me, and I'm too afraid to have a fan community. I'm sorry. Andy Simpson, last question, says, this may be beyond the fair scope of the video, and apologies if it's been asked before, but what, if anything, do you make of Scott Alexander, the Slate Star Codex guy? I'm thinking specifically of his policies in the culture war. In any event, thank you so much for everything you do. You're welcome. So I actually don't know off the top of my head who that is. Let me Google it real quick in case I do actually know what you're talking about. Scott Alexander. Scott Alexander, baseball pitcher? Slate Star Codex. I don't know what this is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what this is. There's a Rational Wiki article about it. Okay. Well, there is one more question. Mishka Bear asks, have you been paying attention to the state of the trans course in the UK? It seems kind of fucked up, more so than it is here. Yeah, tell me about it. My God, what is going on over there? It's like the whole press is run by TERFs. It's like, it's terrifying. I'm like afraid to go to England because they seem to hate us so much. It's terrifying. Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that is. If any English people can explain this to me, I would love to hear what your explanation is, because I'm kind of just shocked and horrified looking at what's written about trans people in the English press. It seems much worse, yeah. All right, that's all the questions. And because my voice is dying, let's call that a stream. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support. And I'll talk to some of you at Discord, hang out in the next couple weeks. Otherwise, see you in the next AMA.